This young minister has been accused of child sexual abuse. He's an outstanding member of the community, widely respected and well-liked. He has no criminal record of any sort. Is he guilty? You decide.
I was a youth minister, an assistant minister. It was a rather small congregation for our community, around 200 to 300 people, at best 300. And I feel the needs of an assistant pastor, an associate minister, a deacon, and the highest being elder pastor, and working with the youth of the congregation. He was a kid at church, underprivileged. He came in with a group of other children, and I reached out and tried to help him as no one else would. And just like the kids that normally are underprivileged, they try to take advantage of people who help them. Obviously, he has a lot of disturbances, mental problems. I think if you'll look in his records, he was even in a mental institution for 3 years before coming to church. Before being in the boys' home, he has a criminal record anyway. Yes, I think ministers are victimized by false reports. They have a very sensitive job. They are out there working with people constantly. They're alone, many times unsupervised. The only person with them, of course, would be the minister and the child, or the minister and the accusing victim, if you will. So who's to say that the minister didn't do it? 80% of the time, I would say, the victim is believed more than the minister. And it's because of all the heightened hoopla over victims and all of that stuff. It's ridiculous. Ministers too much are victimized themselves for their kind deeds. People want to get money out of them if they're a little bit successful. Then their entire reputation is shot. They go back into the ministry, and they may say they trust them, and they're never totally trusted again. Their entire education, work, whatever they've gone through for years has gone down the drain, never to be fully restored, never to be fully recapacitated as what was before. It's a shame, and it's extremely discouraging. I have spent 2 years in seminary. I am the youngest deacon of the Methodist Church in the state. And it's absolutely, all of that prior effort and work, my entire life dream, the hopes of my parents, is now being questioned. I only hope God deals mercifully with them.
What's the truth? Was he falsely accused, as he claims?
I had 53 hands-on definite victims, and there are 42 other ones that can be questioned as far as age and so forth is concerned. I have 53 minor victims.
There's been a tremendous increase in child sexual abuse reports in the last decade. Some of the accused have been highly respected members of the community. Many people wonder whether such respectable citizens could be child abusers. This film will explore this whole issue. Can you tell if someone is a child molester by their standing in the community, how well you know them, or how aggressively they deny it?
In fact, did you molest Mikey?
Yes, I did. I molested Mikey on numerous occasions throughout a 3-year period, from the time beginning at 9 until he was 12 years old. I knew Michael before he began coming to the congregation where I attended. I worked many times with the people in his area with problem children. As an older teenager, I would go out and assist people in the boys' homes and so forth for little small things like baseball games, softball games, etc. And as a matter of fact, I chose him because he was as a victim, because he was a problem child, because people neglected him and oftentimes pushed him aside, and I knew it would be easy for me to get close to him. be his friend, if you will. And then, again, I also knew if he told, that there would be little or small amounts of belief in him. No one would believe him, basically, if he told. And in fact, they didn't. When he did tell, and when it became a bigger issue, when I was investigated, the head of the department of my county told me, he said, "You have nothing to worry about." He said, "We can tell from the very beginning that this is all a big scheme," and it was dropped almost as quickly as it came about. I was caught twice before I was incarcerated. Really, it wasn't being caught; it was I was told on twice before being incarcerated. They were not believed the first 2 times. I had many people, counselors, church leaders, leaders of the community, to come up and stand in my defense several times in those occasions, and it was simply just totally disbelieved. Even the second time, it was more stood out against than the first time, because they thought, well, here he goes again, this young man trying to help unfortunate children, and they're turning against him. And I was even told as much as say, I had a minister come to me and tell me, he said, "Patrick, what's going on is you'll run across it many times. People you try to help will stab you in the back." He said, "Roll with the punches, stick with it, you're doing a good job." He said, "And in the end, you'll be blessed for it."
What about this next man? Is he in denial, or is he an innocent man accused of adult rape? To back up his claim of innocence, Roger took and passed a polygraph.
No, I didn't do this. I did a job at this lady's house a couple of months ago, and during the process of working, she came out and served us drinks. She was friendly. She was wearing really short shorts, and well, I thought she looked nice. She smiled a lot, and I thought she even winked at me once. And we talked some. And there was a motorcycle at the house for sale, and I went to look at it, and this is like a couple of months after the job, and she remembered me. She was alone, except for her baby, and he was in bed. And we talked a little. We talked about the motorcycle. I came on to her, but she didn't say no. I kissed her, we made out a little bit, and one thing led to another, and we were in the bedroom, we had sex. Her next door neighbor came in the house, and I guess he wanted to know who was there, and saw my car out front. I understand that they're friends, but she panicked at that point when he came in. I guess she thought he would tell her husband, and she screamed rape. I didn't know what else to do but run. I was scared.
Roger eventually confessed that what really happened was very different from what you just heard. Here is what actually transpired.
The victim was 23 years old. She was a housewife. I gained access to the home knowing that there was a motorcycle there for sale, so I went there during the daytime knowing she would be home. The husband would be at work. I had done a job there 2 months prior, and knowing that, I knew a lot about them, doing the job for them. I knocked on the front door, and she answered the door, and I said I came to see about the motorcycle for sale. I looked for signs of recognition. She didn't seem to recognize me. I had had a beard before and I was shaved, and she told me to step around back on the patio that was around there, and I walked around there, and she met me out there, and the back door was open. And she turned around, turned her back to me to take the cover off the motorcycle. And that's when I grabbed her. Well, I grabbed her from behind, and in my haste, I dropped the knife that I had in my hand. I was going to use that as a scare tactic because it didn't fit my MO. I had convinced myself that as long as I don't harm this person, there's no real harm done. And so she backed against me, kicked back against me, and I fell. But I wouldn't let her go. I held on to her and I threw her down with me, and we fell through the back door into the living room. And that's when I got on top of her. I wrestled her down, put my hand over her mouth and told her not to scream, that I was going to let her up, but if she did scream, I'd kill her. I used fear as a weapon. I knew already that as long as she was afraid that I would kill her, even though I wouldn't, she would do what I told her to, and she did. And I then forced her into her bedroom. I raped her in the vagina 3 times, 3 different times. I raped her in the mouth with my penis once. I raped her in the anus with my finger once. And afterward, I asked her if she had a knife, and she said yes, and she was real scared at that point. I could see that she thought I was probably going to kill her. She had a child in the house, 18-month-old boy. I made her put him to bed prior to all of this in his bedroom, and he slept. I forced her in the kitchen, made her get out the butcher knife, and she handed it to me, and I said, no, it's not for me, that's for you. I want you to stab me with that knife. And I grabbed the blade and put the point of it right in my solar plexus, beneath my sternum. I said, I want you to push it real hard, and when I close my eyes. And so she started crying, and she said that she couldn't do that, she couldn't kill me. It wasn't in her to kill someone. And then I got angry because I had planned on suicide that day. And I was angry because she wouldn't do it, and I didn't have the courage to do it myself. And so I screamed at her, and I told her, well, you'd better do it, because if you don't, I'm going to use it on you. And I thought I could scare her into doing it. She still wouldn't do it. Her baby started crying. She left, went and got him, came back in the room, and then I broke down and cried. I was crying for myself. I was feeling sorry for me. I wasn't even thinking about her.
I would do kind and generous things for people. I would give families money that did not have any money, that was not from the church treasury. It was from my own personal bank accounts. I would support them in all the ways that I could, talk to them, encourage them. I would go to nursing homes, talk with the elderly, pray with the elderly. I would do community service projects, pick up litter off the side of the road. I would mow the lawns for elderly and handicapped people, go grocery shopping for them. I would do activities that were centered around the things that young people like to do, not the things that tend to happen in churches, which are boring and dull. It was actually very exciting for them, and they enjoyed it, and our youth group grew. It was definitely to cover up what I had been doing. It seemed the more I would get into my deviancy, the more I would try to do that was good in the eyes of everyone else. And indeed, in the eyes of everyone else, I was a good kid. I grew up making good grades in school, went to a nice college. All of that just added to the double life.
The double life. Like so many sex offenders, Patrick worked hard at making people think he was not the kind of person who would commit a sexual offense. The church was not an accidental choice of a place to hide. Patrick felt that people in the church were very generous in their opinions of others, and he used that to his advantage.
I consider people that go to church gullible because they have a trust that comes from being Christians and other people. They tend to be better folks all around. And they seem to want to believe in the good that exists in all people. I consider people wanting to believe that these kind of things don't happen, that children shouldn't be molested, and that it doesn't happen. And it really doesn't happen in my community and in my church. And because of that, it was easy for me to convince them, all the more with my good deeds that I had done, with the actions that I had presented to the members of the congregation. I think that that they want to believe in people, and because of that, you can easily convince with or without convincing words. They said, well, we know this young man. He has been in our community all of his life. We know his parents, his grandparents, his aunts, his uncles. This is not something that he would do. This is not something that goes along with the behavior that we see him in and day out. And that was true, because I was very careful that they did not see that behavior day in and day out. Most of my deviant behavior happened at nighttime and behind the scenes, away and far from any important people who could make those kinds of judgments that, yes, indeed, Patrick is the kind of person who would go around molesting children.
Roger, too, felt that he had led a double life.
I think people are very easy to fool. The government's been doing it forever.
Why do you think they're so easy to fool?
Because people want to believe in something. And they want to hope, and they want to believe. They want to, there's something inside of people that makes them want to believe the best in things and the best in others, because the alternative is not very nice.
If I wanted to fool people, what advice would you give me? What's the best way to do it? How do I act? What do I do?
To be polite, to be kind, to show kindness, especially in public and where there are more than one present. To put this facade on constantly. You wear it like clothes every day. And you smile even when you don't want to smile, when you don't feel like smiling. When you're hurting inside, you push that down and you smile anyway, and you're polite and you're kind, and you say the right things. You say the things that you think people want to hear, that you would like to hear. You exercise that sympathy.
The men in this film are all incarcerated sex offenders. In interviewing men for this project, over and over, I heard the same stories. They each had numerous victims. They were often caught many times before the offense for which they were finally incarcerated, and their victims had not been believed. Most ended up in prison only because some corroborating evidence was found, such as pornographic pictures of a child, or because they eventually confessed. Routinely, these sex offenders talked about how they set up and lived a double life, a life that covered up their deviant activities. When caught, they often denied aggressively, and often they found it surprisingly easy to fool people. Wayne has been incarcerated twice for child molestation. The first incarceration was for raping an 8-year-old girl. He tore her vagina so severely, she had to be taken to the hospital.
How many victims do I have total? I believe it's 12.
Okay.
And I would have to really sit down and think about that. Most of my victims are girlfriends, children.
Okay. Why did nothing come of it when the children told?
Well, like one of my victims, she was rather wild, and it's to have a victim like that, it's very easy to make liars out of them because they don't want to tell what they've been doing to start with. You know, it's kind of like if you tell on me, I'll tell on you.
Did you find people easy or hard to fool?
It depends on whether they care or not. You know, if people in general, they're going to think what they want to think, and that's basically all there is to it. I mean, if they want to think bad of you, they're going to think bad of you. If they hear something bad of you and they kind of believe it, they're going to believe it, and if they don't, they don't. And something like that, it's hard to believe. In the business I was in, you know, this guy works around children all the time. If he was molesting children, you know, there's no way he couldn't get caught.
What was your business?
I was night manager of a grocery store. I was in the public a lot. I led a double life. I mean, the store was, I was an entirely different person. Maybe not so much an attitude or the way I acted, but I could honestly be me. You know, I could be a productive person, and a decent person in the community. It was a place where I could say I'm a decent person. You know, when I went home, I had to face this again. You know, I'm not a decent person. I'm an indecent person. I do immoral things. It was like, you know, and you get at work. For me, if I got at work, you know, I loved to work. I loved to stay at work because I didn't have to go back home and face my real self. When I was first asked the question. When she first asked me the question if I did molest her, then it was like electricity running through my body. You know, it's like being really, I just really got nervous. So basically it was to get over the nervousness, because that's the first telltale sign, you know, is being really nervous and perspiring and such as that. Quiver as my voice as is right now, it wouldn't be, you know, I would have worked through that already. It was basically, you know, if the guy really didn't care, it was kind of like an adult conversation, you know, like, you know, come on, guy, you know I'm not going to do anything like that. You know me, if I was talking to somebody I knew. And I would use my job, you know. Look, I've been around children all my life, you know. If I was going to molest a child, don't you think I'd pick a child outside my home and not have it in my home with me all the time? How do I fool people? It's a hard one. You know, I guess I don't really know how to fool them. Just stare them straight in the eye and just tell them, just answer their questions when they ask you. Basically, it's not to be nervous and to look someone in the eye. If you can get to grasp to look someone in the eye, because that's, you know, that's something that's driven in your head all your life. If somebody looks in your eye, you know they're telling you the truth. So if you can stare someone in the eye and tell them a lie, they're going to say, well, you know, the guy didn't even blink, he didn't look away, he's pretty straight here. Plus, you know, he's pretty good in the community. He's worked at this store 12, 15 years, or he's worked at his business 12, 15 years, and, you know, basically if you can stay calm and look whoever it is in the eye, and especially if the mother of the victim or the victim there, if the victim is anywhere that you can look at her and make her nervous, or him, whichever one it might be, the more nervous that you make them, the more it makes it seem like they're lying. If they're around, you know, most of the time they're not. So just a simple look to a child is traumatizing. I mean, you believe it or not, it really is, especially if the adult is molesting the child.
If this one had gone to court, do you believe you would have been convicted, or do you believe that a jury would have taken your word over the child's?
In my mind, I probably would think that I would have gotten away with it, because I could sit there, and if she was in the courtroom, which sometimes they do, you know, they do bring them in sometimes, and sometimes they don't. And I know when we went to the hearing, she wouldn't even come in the courtroom. And when she did come in, when she looked at me, I just looked back at her, and I really didn't even give her any kind of insinuation with my look. You know, I just basically looked at her. And she went right back out of the courtroom. And if we had went to the court, you know, if we had went to court and we both had been in the courtroom at the same time, then I could have made her nervous enough to make her lie, or make her stumble to make people think she was lying.
Sometimes the sex offenders themselves are taken aback by the denial of other people. The next offender was a sadistic sex offender who was sexually aroused by pain and suffering. He often severely beat his stepson as well as molested him. Even he was surprised by the reaction of a nurse at the emergency room when his son tried to blow the whistle on him.
I took him to the hospital on a number of different occasions. Recall one occasion I beat him up very bad. And I took him to the hospital, and they asked me what happened, and I told them that he fell down a flight of stairs, and my wife was with me. And we didn't have no stairs in the house. My wife stood there and looked at me like, you know, are you crazy? My son said, we don't have stairs. And the nurse told my son to be quiet, that she's not talking to him, she's talking to me. And she asked me to just go ahead and continue relaying, giving her the information. And I continued to tell her that he had fallen down a flight of stairs at home, bumped into the wall and hit the rail. She asked how many stairs it was. I told her it was about 10 or 12 stairs that he had fallen down. And that's how he got himself hurt and bruised up. And she said, okay, and that's the way the hospital report went. It was reported only to my wife 6 or 7, well, I take it back, it was reported to my wife and my parents probably 6 or 7 different times. And there was actually one instance where I went to the police station myself to turn myself in. And the officer at the desk told me to go home and sleep off my drunk, and I left. If it wasn't for the fact that my landlord had found some pornographic pictures of my son in the attic of the home where we were living, I would probably still be molesting.
Why wasn't your son believed?
I made up stories about him, and there was a lot of belief that the adults were to be believed and stepchildren weren't, that this was a problem with him and I not getting along. And that's a lot of the reason that people didn't believe what was happening, didn't believe him. I think general society is easy to fool. Extremely easy to fool. And I say that because of how long I have fooled society and how long I've fooled people. I've been fooling people for well over 25 years. And people have believed what I told them.
In this period of time, when you said you were a molesting monster at home, what were you like in terms of controlling people and in terms of violence? What was really going on in your house that people didn't know about?
What people didn't know about going on in my home was a lot of extreme violence. Beating my son up, beating my wife up. If my wife wouldn't have sex with me when I wanted it, where I or how I wanted it, I would beat her up and then rape her after I'd beat her. I had beaten my son into unconsciousness a number of times. And then I would keep him, sometimes kept locked up in the house until his bruises healed up. Keep him away from school, keeping him away from his friends. Nobody around me knew what I was doing. Nobody around my community knew that I was such a violent individual in the home. If they did, they never said anything. But I don't believe they ever knew, because I was completely and totally different outside of the house once I left the home.
There is no boundaries. Let me rephrase that. There was no boundaries for me. No place was off limits. No time was off limits. And no set of circumstances was off limits. At any time that I saw an opportunity to get what I wanted, which was to rape or molest, I took advantage of that. There were times that I raped in a car with the parents in the front seat, me in the back seat with the children. The child would feel such a bond of trust that the child would decide, okay, I'd like to go to sleep. I'd manipulate the child and lay him across the seat and molest the child with my hand on his penis, by forcing my hand on his penis while the parents were in the front seat. There were other times that I molested and raped while at work, where I simply manipulated the child into coming into my office, and I just very simply locked the door and proceeded to do what I wanted to do, which was to rape the child. My nephew, I raped him for a period of 9 years. Raped and molested him for a period of over 9 years. And very few cases did I rape him in which no one was in the house. I have 11 male rape victims. I have one female rape victim. And I have approximately 1,250 male molest victims.
There is a myth in this culture, and a powerful one, that people can tell if other people are lying by the way they act. Liars, people think, act nervous. They can't look people in the eye. Sex offenders know better. They make it their business to trade on other people's myths. They look people in the eye. They use fluid hand gestures. They deny vigorously and aggressively. And what's more, they often do kind and generous things for others as a cover for their deviant activities. There were many children these people in this film molested who reported them, but they were simply not believed. We will never deal effectively with the problem of sexual aggression if we do not first find, examine, and deal with the myths we use to make ourselves feel safe.